Hello everybody and welcome to Nathan on Shuffle and to my latest episode here. This is my album roundup for the month of October. I'm doing this every month. It's one of my new favorite shows that I've been doing, where I get to talk about all the albums throughout the month that have impressed me, that have grabbed my ears, that I haven't yet been able to talk about fully on the channel. They're quick, short, little recommendations / reviews, just to whet your appetite and give you an idea of what the album's all about. And then you can go off on your own and listen to these records and see if you're interested. I'm going to put a list of all of the albums in the description so that you can copy and paste into Google or into your streaming app of choice or wherever you want to, if you want to give a listen to these incredible records. So I'm going to talk about them briefly. Let's hope that this isn't too long of an episode. I have quite a few to get to throughout this show, and I'm going to move over and let the album covers kind of go by my head so you can see the covers as I'm talking about the album. So let's transition now. First, I'm going to talk about a couple of records that I discovered in October, but were actually released before October. But I want to mention them on the channel because they might feature into my year-end list, and I just want to recommend them because they're special to me. The first is Dave Bainbridge and his record On the Edge of What Could Be. This came out all the way back in July, but it kind of slipped by my radar because of a bit of an unconventional release style. It wasn't released on streaming, so I wasn't able to listen to it when it first was out. It was basically like a physical release only, but I saw that there was an actual download purchase that I could make on their website, so I decided to go ahead because I'm a fan of Dave Bainbridge. I've liked his previous records. I like his work recently with Life Signs. I saw him live with that band on Cruise to the Edge not too long ago. And this is an incredible record. It's one of my favorites of the year. It's a double CD, and it has a really diverse palette of music. There's some prog influences, certainly. There's some Celtic rock. There's some more commercial sounds. There's some almost classical stuff in there, some jazzy moments, some ambient kind of soundscapey stuff. There's stuff in not only English, but also in Scottish and Irish Gaelic. And so there's some expansive, kind of meatier, epic tracks on this as well. Some more instrumental fare. It's just beautiful, focused on his wonderful guitar playing, which he's most known for, but a whole host of guests on this as well. Simon Phillips, Troy Donackley, we got Randy McStine singing on here, Sally Minier, Ebony Buckle, just tons of guests who are excellent in their own right, coming to help with Dave Bainbridge on this wonderful solo record that he's produced. So one of my favorites this year, and it felt criminal to not mention it in an episode at some point. Probably will feature on my year-end list because I really love what he's putting forth here. Definitely one that struck me in a big way this last month when I first discovered it. I also want to briefly mention Whippy Bond Stack and the album Correct Irregulars that came out September 5th. And I talked about on the channel Whippy Bond Stack a couple months ago, I believe. Tactile Demons is the other record he put out this year. But I wanted to mention the other record that he did that came out very close together, where Tactile Demons was very much these bigger instrumental, like proggy tracks. This one is a whole host of short, like 1 to 2 minute, like little tinier tracks, focused more on vocal led pieces. Very much, Frank Zappa in vibe, very eclectic, some jazzy kind of math rock kind of feel to it. Very young artist here. His name is Ben Congliero. This is basically his solo project, and he does most of the instrumentation himself. But you get a really eclectic bunch of tracks here. There's 22 tracks on this record, ranging in a length from half a minute to 6 minutes long-ish. Most of them are in that kind of 3 to 4 minute realm. But a lot of fun sounds. It's kind of all over the place, very eclectic. But I find a lot to enjoy here because he has a cool kind of pop accessibility amongst all this kind of crazy, complex math rock style that grabs me in an interesting way. It's a really interesting blend, and so I want to promote him as an artist. I think he's a really exciting young talent, and I thought he was worth mentioning on this episode, even though this came out in the month prior to this month. Also coming out at the tail end of September was Sindar with their album Tower of the Sun. This came out on September 26th, so came out a little late for me to include it in the September releases. But I've been loving this record. I think it's one of the standouts of this group of records that I'm going to be talking about. Tread lightly. I know a lot of people, I've recently put out a video about why I talk about modern prog, and a lot of people commented that they're not really a fan of the more metal style within prog right now. So beware, this has a heavy metal influence. In fact, the biggest influence here that's pretty obvious is Opeth, and they definitely have some of those growling vocals that Opeth were known for in their death metal phase. But what I like about this record is that it blends it with some really interesting folky elements, some acoustic passages, which Opeth were known for as well, but I feel like that's where they shine and show their own unique spirit. Maybe that's my own bias towards the non-growling sections, but I feel like their character is able to shine through better because the growls sound very much like in the Michael Ackerfeld kind of vein, whereas his singing voice, the clean singing voice, sounds very different from Michael Ackerfeld and gives it its own unique voice and character that kind of fascinates me. The track Greenfields on this record is pretty much just a straightforward folky tune that doesn't have a lot of that more darker, menacing tone, and it's a standout to me, and I really love it. So this record has really grown on me. Even though I'm not a fan as much of the growling vocals and the death metal influences, I think they've really struck a good balance where it's not too overwhelming for my ears. It might be for some, so I want to give that warning because I know a lot of my viewers aren't into the death metal stuff, and I can tolerate it to some extent, but not for long passages. And this is right on the borderline, but what the sections that do stand out to me really stand out and make for some of my favorite music this year. So this is a band from Utah in the US, and I like how they have their own influences that are peeking out of this very Opeth heavy tribute. But it's a wonderful record and very much one I'd recommend to fans of prog metal with folkier influences. And if you're a fan of Opeth, this is kind of a no-brainer. You should check this out. So definitely an interesting record and one I've been listening to a lot in October. Next, I want to talk about Ring van Mobius and their record Firebrand. This is a band that was formed in Norway in 2014, and they've done a few records together. This came out on October 3rd. I believe it's a trio of musicians, and they play a very old school prog. I've heard it described as like ELP meets Vandergraaf Generator. This album has 3 tracks. 2 of them are like just upwards of 10 minutes, and then one more over 20-minute epic called False Dawn. So it's very much in line with the length and track listing you might expect from a 70s prog release as well. And I believe this is their swan song. They've disbanded as a group, but this is kind of their final statement, the last tracks they had, and that they're releasing before they broke up. But you hear a lot of vintage instrumentation, very much in a classic style. If you love classic prog, this should be a no-brainer as well. I will admit it's not grabbing me as much as I hoped it would, as much as it should on paper, perhaps. But I appreciate and respect it for what it is. Maybe it's because my brand of progressive rock is more in the kind of Yes Genesis vein, where this is more in kind of that ELP, Vandergraaf Generator, which are bands that I like, but aren't like a super fan of, so to speak. But they play really incredibly well. They have that fun vintage 70s feel that I like a lot. And I love the album cover. It's really imaginative and fun as well. So definitely worth a listen for fans of classic prog rock. I can see other people being way more into this than I am. But I love how they really honor the spirit of 70s prog, and you can't ask for much more than that. So definitely check out Firebrand by Ring van Mobius. I did want to mention briefly the album by Raphael Weinroth-Browne. This is called Lifeblood. This is a very internationally renowned cellist who's been involved in a lot of prog-related releases. He's played on many of the recent Leprous releases, including Einar Solberg's solo album. He's played with Calandra, Marathon, Soldusk, Musk Ox, a bunch of different bands, many I haven't heard of, but I was looking at references of what he's been a part of. But this is beautiful music, just a very modern classical with a little bit of a prog metal tinge in the intensity of the pieces and the complexity. But I believe he does all the instrumentation here through cellos. He says all sounds produced using an acoustic cello, amplifiers, and effects pedals, with the exception of bass drum on 2 different tracks. So it's amazing what sounds he's able to bring into this. And it's like he's able to sound like way more people are involved than just him, because there's so many things going on in these mixes. But it's intricate, beautiful, classically inspired cello music with a lot of verve and a lot of excitement in the mix. And it's really beautifully done. And it's one of those albums that you just have to play from start to finish and just immerse yourself in this instrumental journey that takes you through several different passages, and it's a great experience. So I'd recommend that, especially if you're into that more classically inspired feel, love the sound of the cello. There's a lot of cool exploration here that I think's worth your time and attention. Next, on more of the prog metal front, we've got Times Forgotten and their album Songs of Awakening that came out October 3rd. This is a progressive rock band, metal band from Costa Rica that has their origins way back in 2004. They have a female lead singer who's very excellent vocalist, and it sounds like your typical, Dream Theater inspired prog metal, maybe a bit more brighter and sunnier, not as dark and heavy and foreboding. There's a lot of cool tracks here. They have a djenty kind of inspired feel to them at times, some almost electronica influences at other times. They bring a lot of these modern flares that you expect from the modern prog metal scene, but do it in a very uplifting and inspiring way. And I really like their aesthetic and their sound. It's just really easy to get into, very accessible prog metal. There's maybe a little hint of a couple of sections of like heavier vocals, but mostly it's just very much your standard clean vocal style progressive metal. And I think it's really excellent. And the vocalist is a standout, Priscilla Ruiz. Just excellent female vocals, really great playing throughout the record, some really great guitar playing in particular. The keyboards kind of take more of a back seat and are more about the texture and style. But I really love their sound and aesthetic, and I think it's a band well worth checking out, especially if you're into the prog metal scene. They have a definite style to them that gives them a unique voice in that lane, and I really enjoyed this release. Next, we go a little bit off the beaten path here with Madison Cunningham's Ace. Definitely not in the prog realm, but in these shows, since I do kind of more quicker hits of these different albums, I'm working on branching out a little bit into different aspects of music, into some of my other tastes that aren't purely prog-centered. And this is more singer-songwriter, a little bit of a throwback to kind of a 70s feel on this record, definitely inspired by Joni Mitchell's Blue, piano-based singer-songwriter material that sounds very accessible and easy to get into, but when you look into it, there's a lot of hidden depth and layers and intricacy that she's working with. She's one of the most brilliant singer-songwriters today, I would say, from what I've heard from her. This is her third record, basically. And her previous records, I believe, were a bit more guitar-based. She kind of came up known as a bit of a guitar prodigy to a lot of people, but she's been working her way into a lot of people's hearts as just a really brilliant singer-songwriter with a lot of great lyrics and some really intricate arrangements. And this record is no different. This has probably been one of my most listened to records of the month, honestly. I've become a little bit obsessed with it because it just sounds so beautiful and soothing and pleasant. And I love music that's melodic and pleasing, has kind of almost a pop hook sensibility, but there's intricacy and layers and complexities if you dive deeper. Stuff that makes it more interesting and exciting than just your standard, mainstream radio hit. And she does that expertly well. There's a track here where she's joined by Fleet Foxes, who have always been one of my favorite non-prog groups, folk-inspired, great vocals, beautiful. I love her singing throughout the record is just heavenly, and there's so many great tracks. It's hard to point to any particular. I love Skeletry, which gives a bit of a peppier, folkier vibe to her music. Wake is the track that features Fleet Foxes, which I really think is beautiful. Break the Jaw stands out to me as well. My Full Name is just a beautiful piano ballad. Just so much to love and behold here, if you're into that kind of just beautiful singer-songwriter vein that feels like it has a foot into the 70s in my ears at least. But she's a virtuosic talent in today's music scene that I think should be celebrated. And so one of my favorite records of the month, certainly, and hope you give it a chance as well. Next, we get into Squeaky Feet and their album Overview Effect. They describe themselves on Bandcamp as prog rock with a pocket. They're basically a jam band similar to Humphreys McGee, which I've talked about in one of these episodes prior. But they have a bit of a prog rock sensibility amongst this like jam band bass. They're very much about improvisation on their live shows, but bring more of like a studio perfection to these albums in particular. Their previous album, I believe, was their first studio record called Cause for Alarm back in 2023. This one feels a bit more focused, a bit more song-based, where that one felt a bit more expanded and more of those improvised kind of extended instrumentals. This one has a bit of that. These tracks are definitely lengthier. But you get a bit more of songcraft by the band. They focus more on precision within their songwriting. But I had a lot of fun listening to this record. I think there's some fun proggy influences here, but it's not. I think what's fascinating about these jam bands that are like flirting with prog rock, similar to Humphreys McGee, is they don't just sound like you're, insert Yes influence, insert Genesis influence here. They have disparate influences that come from different places within different styles and different facets of music. They're influenced by certain more funk style bands. They're influenced by maybe some more metal style stuff at sections. And you get a cool melting pot of a lot of different things that sounds pretty fresh and interesting. This is one that's been growing on me in repeated listens. At my first listen, I felt like the music kind of just washed over me and nothing felt too memorable, but things have really hooked into my brain as I've listened more and have started to develop more of a relationship with this record, and things are starting to stand out better, and I'm starting to find the hooks that are hidden beneath the layers of music on this record. So another great one to check out if you're into that jam band scene. If you want your prog rock with a little bit more pocket and groove, they really tick that box, and I think this is a great record to showcase their talents. Very briefly, I want to mention The Last Dinner Party from the Pyre. This came out October 17th. Another one off the beaten path that isn't prog at all, more in this kind of pop rock style. But another one that feels a little bit like a throwback to older artists, and has a really great sense of modern musicality to it. This is a British rock band of, I believe it's all female artists, and their first album was called Prelude to Ecstasy. And this one from the Pyre, I think, is a great continuation from that record. I've heard some people say that this was a disappointment to them compared to the first record, but to me, they sound very similar and in the same style. And, I think it just depends on your personal preference, which one you like more. But they have kind of this dramatic flair to them, some great storytelling, almost like these kind of poetic monologues set to music, set to this more rock aesthetic. And it's just a lot of fun. It reminds me of like Kate Bush, perhaps, is a great reference point. And so they have a little bit of this kind of throwback style sound, but they bring it into the modern era and craft a really catchy set of tracks that caught my ear and attention and are just a little bit more intricate and intriguing than kind of your just standard pop music. So I wanted to mention it as something a little bit off the beaten path, but still something I think many could enjoy who like the same style of music as me. I want to quickly mention an EP from Randy McStine called My Summer Holiday. This came out October 24th. It's only 4 tracks. It's supremely short, just under 20 minutes, but some really cool songs that from a great singer-songwriter. Randy McStine is making his name known in the prog world. He's been playing on stage with Steven Wilson, both solo and in Porcupine Tree. He was featured on the Car Mechanic record from this year, as well as other prog rock records that have come out. And he just is an incredible singer-songwriter. The music is just really melodic and really beautifully written and composed. He does all the instrumentation himself on this. These were basically just a few songs he wrote between tours with Steven Wilson, showcasing an evolution in his songwriting, exploring some new sounds and instruments at home. And I'm always here to listen to some great experimentation from some of my favorite artists. So wanted to mention that one briefly. Like I said, short record. It's available on his Bandcamp, but definitely very cool. A lot of cool tracks on this record to enjoy. I also wanted to briefly mention Our Oceans. Their album is called Right Here, Right Now that came out, but I'm focused on their EP. This is the first 4 tracks of the record, basically, that have been released as singles. You can find it on streaming kind of under the Untamed EP, which is the latest single on the record. So there's 4 tracks here: Untamed, Leave Me Be, Lost in Blue, and Golden Rain, which are basically the first 4 tracks from the full record. I don't have the full record yet. It's only available through physical media, so you have to buy the CD or the vinyl to be able to hear it. And unfortunately for me in the States, since this is a band in Europe, it's a little bit expensive to get the album my way. I wish there was a way to download it, like on a Bandcamp or something. I would gladly purchase a digital download of this record based on what I've heard from these singles that have come out, because this is more modern progressive rock, clean vocals, kind of in the lane of Steven Wilson, Porcupine Tree, Radiohead, that kind of a world. It reminded me almost a little bit of Advent Horizon as well, kind of a harder edged, prog rock, so to speak, inspired ultimately by Rush, perhaps. But really clean sounding, really fun, a great trio of musicians. They're from the Netherlands. They started out as an instrumental prog fusion group called Exivius, but then they brought on a vocalist and formed as Our Oceans. This is their 3rd record, I believe, as Our Oceans. And I was just really falling in love with it. I just recently discovered this a couple days ago, honestly. And it blew me away so much I decided to shoehorn it into this episode, even though I don't have the full record at my disposal. So that could tell you a lot about how I feel about this record so far, about the singles that I've been listening to, that I want to put it out here anyways. So I'll put that in the description to go check it out. If you want to check out the full record, you can buy it on CD or on vinyl from the band's website. But for now, I'm kind of just being satisfied by these singles. Maybe they'll do a full release on streaming at some point, or on a digital form, like on a Bandcamp or something. But for now, I'm stuck a little bit frustrated, unsure what to do in these certain circumstances. But here we are, a great little taste for that record that I wanted to bring to your attention, because it's right in my wheelhouse of the kind of prog that I tend to like. And then I wanted to talk about a great record that just came out, Gaspacho, their album Magic 8-Ball. This came out October 31st, just this past Friday. Incredible record. It probably honestly deserves its own review. I just don't really have time to do a full-on review for this band, but excellent record from Gaspacho. They're well known in the prog scene. They have a bit of this kind of Radiohead, Marillion kind of feel to them, much more atmospheric and expansive. They're not known for their quirky, fast, intricate instrumentation or anything like that. It's much more about the emotion, about the feel of the record, about the storytelling. They kind of fit into this almost dark fantasy style mode. And this record is very whimsical in style. It's 8 tracks. Each one is basically a different short story based on these ideas of fate and inevitability and randomness and people's expectations and their desires. And it's a cool concept brought to life in a fascinating way. Every track is fun in its own way. The vocals are just so beautiful and melancholic, but just really expanded and just beautiful to listen to. They tell these stories expertly well. Starling, that starts up the record, is one of the highlights. The longest track on the record, and it really takes its time to build and grow and has a beautiful soundscape to it. We Are Strangers is more of the quick, kind of poppier track that has a really catchy chorus to it. I love Magic 8-Ball, the title track, which gives a bit of a almost carnival-esque kind of vibe to it as well. But there's so many highlights and moments that make this record well worth checking out. This is kind of a must-listen in the prog world, I would venture to say. I think it's fantastic. The band has had quite an expansive catalog at this point that's very well known and highly regarded. Many people look at Night as one of their standout releases. Demon, they have a lot to offer, and they're an incredible band, well worth your time and attention. And so I wanted to mention it in this episode as one of the standout October releases. An album that I did take the time to do a full review for was Lunatic Souls, The World Under Unsun. So go check out my review to get my thoughts on that. But I thought it was an excellent release, very much more in an atmospheric, ambient kind of vein than Riverside proper. But Marius Duda is the brain behind this project, and it's an expansive double disc of excellent material in that world. If you've heard Lunatic Soul before, this is like the Lunatic Soul greatest hits and the culmination of everything that's come before it, and has a lot of standout moments and great tracks on it. So definitely one of the standout releases in October. And then finally, of course, I have to mention Neal Morse and his solo record. This is more of a singer-songwriter, not prog record, more just him talking about his life through more, straightforward tracks. Nothing very overtly proggy about it, but still, he's a great songwriter, storyteller, and I got to mention him whenever he puts out a release, of course. So definitely check it out if you're into his more singer-songwriter side and want just a cool collection of well-written tracks in kind of a bluesy rock style vein. This is a really cool album from Neal Morse, so check it out. And so that's where we'll end it today. Those are the records that interested me in October. Most of these records were released in October. A few of them were released prior, but I first discovered them in October, so I decided to shoehorn them in that way. I'll do another episode for the music that stood out to me in November. And then in December, I'm probably going to focus on the end-of-year content, which will include some of the December releases. There's usually not much that comes out in December anyways, because everyone wants to get their music in before everyone starts doing their end-of-year lists and stuff. But if there's anything from December that I want to highlight, I'll put it into the year-end content and spotlight it that way. And then we'll be back on our monthly format moving into 2026. So thank you guys for joining me. Hopefully you found something to enjoy in this list of records. Like I said, go to the description if you wanted to see the titles of the record, the artist names, and go search them. They're definitely worth supporting, and hopefully this will inspire you to go check out some cool new music. So thank you guys so much, and I'll catch you guys in a future episode. Bye, everybody.